When I bought my property 5 years ago, I thought I was buying a quiet slice of land, a place where I could finally build my dream cabin and enjoy weekends away from the noise of the city. What I didn't realize at the time was that my property sat at the edge of a small watershed, one that fed into several surrounding neighborhoods, including a newly formed HOA community. I maintained the watershed responsibly. I kept the natural channels clean, cleared fallen debris, and monitored runoff every rainy season. It wasn't just property to me, it was an ecosystem. But apparently, the HOA saw it differently. They saw it as an opportunity. One morning, I woke up to the sound of heavy machinery, and when I walked out to investigate, I was stunned to find a construction crew carving a path through the wetlands area, laying down gravel like they owned the place. And the best part? They didn't even bother to inform me. I confronted their contractor, who casually told me the HOA hired them to build an access road across my watershed. At first, I tried to be reasonable. I walked over to the HOA president's house and asked them why they were building a road on land they didn't own. The president, a man who acted like he was the mayor of the entire county, told me they had permission from the community and that the area was unused land anyway. I reminded him that unused didn't mean unowned, and certainly didn't mean unimportant. He waved his hand dismissively and said, "Look, once the road is done, everyone benefits." I told him plainly that if they didn't stop construction immediately, I would take legal action. Instead of backing down, he smirked and said, "Good luck proving it's yours." That's when I decided to play it smart. I didn't yell, I didn't argue, I simply went home, opened my filing cabinet, and gathered every document related to the watershed, including the survey map that explicitly showed the boundary lines. Then I made one more call, to the County Environmental Department. A week later, after several days of rain, the HOA road began showing signs of weakness. They had covered up natural drainage channels to make it look nicer, which meant water had nowhere to go except straight under the gravel road. Mud started swallowing the edges, the ground softened, and the entire structure was sinking. Meanwhile, the HOA ignored my warnings and continued pouring money into this doomed project. I kept my distance until the final storm hit. After a long night of heavy rainfall, parts of the road simply collapsed into the watershed. It wasn't my doing. Mother Nature just reclaimed her territory. The HOA was furious and demanded I fix it. I told them calmly that I was already planning to stabilize the watershed, but first I needed my equipment. That's when the real showdown began. The next morning, I drove my excavator down the access path leading toward the watershed. I had permits, I had documentation, I had legal clearance. But the moment the HOA officers spotted me, they rushed over and physically tried to block the machine with their cars and bodies. One officer shouted, "You can't dig here! This is HOA property!" And another yelled, "We order you to stop construction immediately!" They were waving clipboards and threatening fines like they owned the entire world. I stepped out of the excavator, handed them a packet of documents, and said, "You might want to read the first page." Confused and annoyed, the president flipped it open, and his face went from confident to pale in 3 seconds. The document clearly stated that I, not the HOA, was the legal owner of the watershed and all surrounding drainage land, and that any attempt to block me from maintaining it violated county environmental law. Suddenly, the shouting stopped. The county inspector arrived soon after, because I had invited him. He walked the HOA officers through every violation they had committed: disturbing protected wetlands, altering drainage systems without a permit, building on private land, and interfering with watershed maintenance. The fines weren't small. The HOA president's voice cracked when he heard the numbers. I asked the inspector if I could proceed with my excavator to repair the damage. He nodded and said, "It's your property. In fact, it's your responsibility." The HOA officers stepped aside, silent and stunned. As I restarted my excavator, they watched helplessly, finally understanding the gravity of what they had done. Over the next few days, I restored the natural channels, removed the illegal gravel, and stabilized the soil. It wasn't easy, but I did it because I cared about the land, not just for myself, but for the whole watershed community. Meanwhile, the HOA had to send out a newsletter explaining why their new road project had been permanently shut down and why fees were increasing to pay off environmental fines. They didn't mention me by name, but everyone in the neighborhood knew exactly what happened. Since then, they haven't tried to touch the watershed, they don't even come near it. And whenever the HOA president sees me, he avoids eye contact. That's fine by me. The land is safe, the ecosystem is protected, and they finally learned a lesson. Don't mess with someone's property, especially when they own the entire watershed beneath your feet.